with our next edition of Clover Connections. Today, as we get ready for our next upcoming 4-H year, we just want to take just a short segment to talk a little bit about what a 4-H meeting is. Typically, our meetings are about an hour in length, and in a perfect world, our 4-H meetings would include three things. They would include a business section, an education section, and a recreation section. In that whole hour, we would do all three of those things at every one of our meetings. So we're going to talk a little bit about what each of those areas are and what could be happening in your 4-H clubs and groups during those sections. And know that we'll have a deeper dive into each one of them in upcoming Clover Connection series as well. So as our meetings are an hour in length, we have business, education, or sometimes I call that shared learning, and recreation. So Jill, would you mind telling us a little bit about what happens during a business meeting?
Yeah, so in your business meeting, that should be 15 to 20 minutes. And people always look at me surprised. They're like, 15 or 20 minutes? How can I get through the business in my club in 15 or 20 minutes? So really the big thing is that the club is having the opportunity to make decisions about what they're doing together. So whether that's using Robert's Rules of Orders or whatever consensus tool that you want to use, that making sure that everyone has input and everyone has some opportunity to add value. So some typical things that we might do, we might discuss, what are we spending our money on for this year? What activities are we doing? Setting up that club calendar. We might go over our bylaws. We really might talk about all of those things that include business. The other thing that happens during the business portion of our meeting is that our committees might have an opportunity to talk. So if you have a fundraising committee, they might say, hey, in this upcoming year, we came up with these three options. As a club, which of these three sounds great to you? And that would be an opportunity for the club to give feedback and vote, and for that committee to then go back and plan that activity. I think one of the big things when I'm thinking about that 15 to 20 minutes and how do I fit things into that is, are there things I can send out ahead of time? Can I send out an email that says, hey, we're thinking about covering this topic. Can you give us feedback? Or here's our club bylaws. Look these over. Come back with any questions that you have at the meeting, because we're going to adopt those at our upcoming next meeting. So really thinking through some ways that people can have that information ahead of time. So when you get to the meeting, you can get down to the nitty gritty of fun of discussing all of those great options and then voting on what our club is going to do. So 15 to 20 minutes should be your business portion of your meeting.
And Jill, you mentioned committees, and some of our clubs and groups might not have them, but if you don't have committees, sometimes forming one, especially around those topics that are going to be really long conversations, like fair decorations or fundraising opportunities, could be a committee of young people and an adult or two that want to really dive into that and bring ideas back to the next meeting. That shortens up your business meeting, but you still get the business done. It just happens in an outside space. So thanks for bringing up the word committees. Dawn, I was just going to have you talk a little bit about education or shared learning.
So education is the biggest piece of that 3 parts of a meeting pie. Education is supposed to take around 20 to 30 minutes of your meeting. And this is where, 4-H is all about that education and where we really can meet the needs of the young people in our clubs and groups. So it's really important when you start off the 4-H year, find out what your club and group members are really interested in. That will help you set a really great tone and really make sure that you're meeting all of those needs. Education is a great thing that you can build into your club calendar, and it should be there as a major portion of your club's calendar on their charter document. So making sure that every meeting that you're having has that major chunk of education. Now, thinking about education, it doesn't have to be that traditional everyone sitting and listening to someone. It could be really that shared learning opportunity. So having our young people, our older youth probably know a lot about certain projects, and they can share that knowledge through demonstrations or speeches. You can also bring in community members who are very passionate or knowledgeable about different topics. They can be a guest speaker at a meeting. Field trips, a great way to go out and see the community and learn about those things that our members are interested in. So there's lots of ways that you can build in shared learning and education into your regular club or group meetings.
And in the times of COVID, that education could be done a virtual field trip, a virtual guest speaker. There's lots of ways to do that as well. Make sure you reach out to your local educators for ideas on how to do that. Dawn, you also mentioned earlier when we were talking about this not being typical like classroom education. Sometimes that seems intimidating.
Yeah. And we want our members to feel like, they're really learning things, they're learning new skills, they're learning new knowledge, they're making those connections. So yeah, thinking about it in a non-traditional kind of creative and out of the box way.
And Marie, the third section of our 4-H meetings is recreation, and let me tell you, 4-H isn't fun. We've got to figure out how we keep 4-H fun for our 4-H members, and this is where maybe that recreation comes in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, because all of our members, but the first thing they say is, I want 4-H to be fun. And recreation is one way to make that happen. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the last part of the meeting. Maybe it's the first thing. As people are starting to come in, they can do an activity or a game or whatever it may be. One of the things that I like to think about is that this is a chance for team building within your club. So you're giving a chance for people to become part of the team, feel like they're a member of what's happening. And during the first months that you're really starting in 4-H, it's a good idea to have a name game. And you might do that as a part of your, when they're taking attendance, is so that people can identify the name of the people that are in your club and what different people might have different skills. And it's really fun if you do some team building to find out in your clubs. Like I think of a train wreck or some game like that, where they have to trade places if they're in a certain project or if they're interested in a certain thing, because then they find out different things about the members in their club. And so, and this is another great way for some of our officers to take some leadership roles, is that the adults don't have to come up with the games. The kids already know what they are. And so just making sure that they have the supplies that they need to do the activities would be awesome. So yeah, and I've even had some clubs that do them, Jill, during the middle of the business meeting. So maybe if the business meeting's going long, let's do it between old and new business, just to have a little break up and get the kids re-energized and back into, okay, now we're going to sit and talk a little bit more about business. So it's something you can do wherever you want in your club.
I love that. Like putting that in the middle of the business meeting, putting that in the beginning. There's no right or wrong place for any of these three things to happen. I think you also mentioned something that's super important. This is not my 4-H club. It's not Jill or Dawn's or Marie's. It is your 4-H members. If you've elected officers, your officers help lead your business meeting. If you've elected officers, you might have a recreation leader that helps do what Marie was just talking about. And if you have members in your club, which you all do, they are the ones who direct what Dawn was talking about. What do they want to learn about and how do they want to share? So being sure that we are responsive to our young people who are helping to lead the club. We as adults are there to support them in that. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be diving into business, education, and recreation in a more in-depth session. So be sure you check those out there. Thanks everybody for joining us for this edition of Clover Connections.